time with going around the eye rather than starting at the, so I'm going to put a wet coat. So I'm going to go around my eyes. It just seemed a little easier when we did it yesterday. So uh, by the time you do around your outer edges, we had to come back and kind of reblend that outer edge thing again. You'll see what I mean. So it's going to be a double loaded of my 3/8 or a number 10 if you're using that kind. And we want to come in around. I'm not concerned about getting it on my eye. I do want to make sure that I have some right up to the eye, because what ends up happening, I just want it darker along the side and the top. What ends up happening is if you try to go just around the eye, you see that little white spot? You don't want that. So go on the eye. They're not there so we don't get anything on them. They're there painted so we can easily find them. Because if I just traced a line, now it would be gone, right? So this way we put the whole thing on, paint the eye, the same thing with the nose. That's why it only really needed one coat. The nose itself, I'm going to see what happens without doing a wet coat first here. That's not too bad. So the nose is really just darkened around the bottom. This is where the shadow is. It's not up here. So we're going to just blend it off like that so it's darker there. And the same thing with our little mouth. Oh. I'm just going to kind of come through here.
Like a slip slap.
Yeah, and just kind of dab in where the mouth is.
Okay. Not perfection.
No, we just want to end up, and you'll see we'll come in here after and we'll do a little bit of dry brushing too. It's if we have little gaps in between those little dark shadows, doesn't matter. That's all good. Now I switch to my 1/2 inch or a number 12, and this is where I will do a wet coat. So my wet coat, I want to fade up into this. So I can just smudge with my finger even. I put my wet coat on, and you can only do so much of a section because it dries up on you. You can, when we're doing the body afterwards, if you have a misting bottle, you might like that because that helps to, I can put one out on each table, and then you guys can, actually Marianne, Chuck, I have yours here.
Oh, did I leave it behind?
Yes, you did.
I was going to throw mine in, and I said, nope, we don't need it.
I think I took mine out too. Yes.
So anyway, so we're gonna see how I've double loaded. I'm pitting the cobblestone portobello.
Mushroom.
Here we go. All the way along the outside edge, keeping it darker. And my brush has still got the sand gray on the other side, so I keep that color there. And I'm at slip slap. We want to see those brush stroke marks that just fade in, so it gives us a little bit of texture. And I'm going to just soften in between the mouth and my nose shadow as well, with what's left on my brush kind of thing. This is going to get shaded, so when you're looking at it, you're going to see, you'll say, oh, well, it looks a lot darker in my finished picture. Of course, not in this picture that we're using right now. This one just shows that it's very light around here. All we're looking for is to set in a little bit of difference. So you can see now, as I work around here, that there's a little bit of indent from the eye. That's what we're looking for. Indent of the eye and indent, you know, so it shows the shadow that's cast underneath our nose. And I just fade that off soft. And you can always use your built-in blender and smudge that out. So gonna come along here up underneath his hat with that double loaded portobello and sand gray, so that I can, and I keep the sand gray down. If you feel like, oh no, I've got too much portobello, just pick up a bit more sand gray on the brush and you can kind of work your way back in there just to soften it. But it's getting shaded. We are also going to be doing some dry brushing on the face, so it's all going to totally change. But you just don't want to leave places where there's no, whoops, I picked up the wrong color there. I must have dragged through it. I didn't want that much portobello. You don't want a place that looks like you can just see your base coat from original. You know, so that's why I'm just softly working into that area. This area here in his cheek was just plain left alone. So I'm just very softly. And when I'm slip slapping, it's back and forth X's. I'm barely using any pressure. It's nice and soft. Alrighty, that's that part. A wet coat the center, and I'm using a 1-inch brush so that we don't have to, it'll dry before we can even get to it if we use smaller. And I'm coming down to his waist, and that's where this curve is on the body. So I'm going to pick up on the corner of my brush again, and the reason our scarf is there again is not so we don't get paint on it, it's so we don't end up leaving a gap all the way around it. So I'm just going to slap my way inwards. I want it to be fairly dark. That's why I didn't bring the sand gray right to the edge. I left a little space there.
You'll have to push it just a little bit.
Yeah, there's not showing, Wendy.
Oh, she can't see anything.
Sorry, Carol, but
I know where you're going, I'm listening, but
okay.
the seeing is a little better.
So the thing is we're slapping our way down to the scarf. I'll put some more along here of the sand gray. I don't think there's much I can do for Carol because I can't put him down any further there. Okay, so again, I want the portobello along the scarf and along the bottom of the scarf here. Now, what happens, I come up this side, I have portobello next to the scarf. You can see my brush stroke marks, and that's fine. And we are gonna, again, do a little bit of dry brushing, but you see how much darker this is compared to the face. So we just keep the dark towards the scarf, and I'm also gonna turn it around and keep dark towards the outer edge. So this is giving him his shadow all the way along the outer edge as well. I'm slapping, so I will see brush stroke marks. I try to slow it down for you to see that. Now, his waist. I want to give him a bit of a waist. So I want that portobello along here. And I'll just kind of slap my way. So you can see where his waist is. So I'm going to flip my brush around and kind of calm that down here. But I want that darker to kind of come this way as well. So it's going to back and forth here just to calm those. But this is going to show his bulge. We're hoping that you can see his bulge. Not to the point that he's got an apron. We don't like that. Not too many people want those aprons. So I'm going to give him some sand gray in the middle here of his bottom. But do you see how much I'm leaving for portobello? I'm going to come from the bottom with basic base coating portobello. Coming up. We want it to be nice and dark. He's really dirty at the bottom. So when you look at your finished piece, so now I've got my sand gray that I'm working into it. So I'll fade it away down there. It doesn't mean that we're not having any light down there. It just means that we want him to be completely in a stronger color around the outer edge. He maybe soaked up a mud puddle, I don't know. But we want him to have a nice darker bottom. So if I had base coated, wet coat all the way down there with the sand gray, I wouldn't have been able to achieve such a dark portobello there. It would have cut it too much. So I'm just slapping this. We're fading it out. If some of you get it more sand gray heading outwards, it's not a biggie. Don't worry about it. Our whole goal is that he's got more portobello along the outer edges. And again, we want this to end up with that waistband here where it bulges between the two balls of snow.
Did you wet coat the whole thing at the bottom first?
No, I wet coat just the center with sand gray, and then I base coated the
Yeah, got it.
and I'll just work these two together. A little more sand gray from the middle outwards. And I'm not concerned that I have the same amount. I'll pick up a bit more portobello because I got it right up into the scarf area. I'm not concerned that both sides are the same. He's actually darker on one side than the other, and I probably have it on the wrong side, but it doesn't really matter. He's a snowman. We just kind of want him nice and dark so it's kind of planted at the bottom. All right. And our base we're going to do in Portobello as well. So it'll be solid Portobello with some snowflakes and scrolls stenciled on them as well. So nice and soft. And because it's pine, of course, we're going to have some wood grain marks. That's just the way it works with pine opposed to MDF. But of course, our MDF would not. Now, I want a bit of moisture. I'm dampening my brush. I'll just put it on the toweling to take the excess off so that I can, any dry patches that I might see in there, I can go over. We also have the spray bottle. Can you reach me right there? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so this is Mary, yours. When I'm using the spray bottle, I just spray. This is a long mist, so it drops on my piece, and I'm able to come in here, and now that moisture is there, just nice and soft, and blend with that. You don't spray on your piece, you spray over it and let the mist fall. And these mist spray bottles are used quite often in quilting and sewing, and those of you who might iron. That I used the I word. That's terrible. So again, over here he needs a bit more Portobello. So that's how we're going to do him. Okay, so he's going to get nice and dark around the outer edges. That's your job.
And then quite dark up here.
Yep, nice and dark up in the scarf area. That's creating his shadow. I missed it there as well. Perfect.
New dry brush with Portobello.
What are you doing, Wendy?
I'm loading
The
a
hat.
new dry brush with
Yeah.
Portobello.
Oh, you're doing this hat.
And I'm
okay.
going to nice and softly dry brush a section. And I'm not pressing hard. And you kind of go circular. The whole thing with it is, as I get out to where I want to be my outer edges, do you see how I'm easing off? So that I'm not pressing as hard. It's going to give it a nice soft edge. So it just finishes off. The center is a little heavier, but the outer edges I fade off. I'm going to just kind of come down here and just add a little bit around the brim. That's it.
Yeah.
So now that I've done it in Portobello, and you see how much lighter it really looks on the charcoal gray, I'm going to pick up a little sand gray on the brush. I'm even going to pounce it in where the Portobello is. So anybody who already had a dirty brush, they could do that with this. But the first part, they need to have a clean brush. So usually one person kind of passes it around in our class like this. Okay, so now I have lighter. I'm going to come back in the center, and I should have given it a blow dry really, because it'll grab patchier, which it's sort of doing, and a little bit here. So it's just lightening it a bit, and we're going to take a liner and we're going to do some cross hatching. So I'm just going to take, I might even drag it through the stippled area there, but it's just thin it down. You always have to have water in it, and all I'm going to do is just add a couple of cross hatching lines. I'm going to give them a little bit more of a highlight. That's it. Okay, so that is, now this could be, this could be done over top of the stenciling or under the stenciling. It makes no difference. Okay, so, and we're going to be adding stencils next. Okay, I'm going to start with sand gray. I pick it up on my dry domed stippler, and I have to scuff off on a dry place in my towel. That's hard to find. If you have any moisture in your towel or in your brush, or if this isn't blow dried, it will grab really fast there. And I always give it a grind so that it really takes it out of the middle of that brush. So I'm going to nice and soft dry brush sand gray over here. You'll see a fair bit of sand gray between his eyes, up the middle of his nose. So we're referring to this photo, so you can see that it's lighter here, it's lighter all here.
Okay.
I'm going to bring a little in between here, but you see how that calms down where we might have had it really patchy, if I have it patchy, I did it for you guys so you could see. I sacrificed my snowman.
Thank you.
Generous.
I know. Damn. Oop. Cut rated, X-rated film. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up a little bit of warm white. Yikes.
Right there.
On the same brush?
Yeah, on the dirty brush. That's important. So I pick it up, pounce it off really good into the palette. We're not looking to have it really, really white, but it does brighten. So, and remember I talk about grinding. I want to get it out of the center. The center of that brush ends up with a bit of white, wet paint in there, and it really comes out. So you see how now that it's not pure white because I put it on the dirty brush, so there still would be a bit of sand gray in there, but you can see how that brightens it up. Now we still have our cheek color that goes on in the next section of this video.
So is this as wide, Wendy? Or are you going over the?
Not coming out as far.
Okay.
So we always, when we do a second one, whether it's dark or light, we never want to come out as far. So it's like a second shading. The more we put something on lighter like this, it's going to round his face. So the areas that have the light are going to come out, and the parts that are dark kind of push back. So this gives him a little bit more of a rounded look. Now I'm going to pick up a bit more of the sand gray on the dirty brush. Doesn't matter that I still have white on there. And I'm going to nice and soft dry brush a little bit in the middle of his belly. Now absolutely everybody's is different. You may have it really bright there and you don't need it. Or you may have an area where you think, oh, I could really have used more Portobello. You can take a different brush and just pick up Portobello and come in with that. So I'm just putting a little of that there, and I can put a little in the middle down here as well. Not much. We're not looking to really brighten that base down there, but it just kind of softens it a little bit. And it is going to make his middle of his belly sort of swell out. I wish we could use Portobello on us. Push us back. All right, so that's his highlighting now. So you can really see the difference up here on the face. And then we will be shading, but if you were going to shade right away, you'd have to blow dry it, because even though it's dry brushing, there's moisture in that paint. And if you shade right on top of it, we're going to do it next class, so it's going to have set. But if you shade right on top of it, it's going to end up giving you track marks, because it's going to remove some of your dry brushing. So always blow dry your dry brushing before you shade on top of it. All right, so that's our highlighting and dry brushing, and go and do that. All right, so I'm taking my 1/8 Deerfoot. I'm loading it with my black brown mix, and I pounce it on the palette, so it's going to kind of splay open my bristles a bit. I have a fair bit of paint in here, and I'm going to go on those pieces of coal. Just touch. So do you see that they're just touching? I'm not pressing. I don't want them to get big, and I want you to see the little uneven marks around them. So that's with that. Then I'm going to take my liner, nice fine liner, thin down your black brown, and I'm just going to use like a stitched mark across them. Never always perfect.
Not a problem.
Now, there's one more step to this. I take Portobello while they're wet. I take Portobello while they're wet, and I touch onto them as a little tiny bit of a highlight.
Oh.
So it's just random here and there.
Okay.
I might come up here so it'll be a little brighter, and then maybe this one will be less by the time I get there. So it just adds a little highlight in there. That's all we do. Okay, so, and then before the next step, we want to rebase coat the nose and the eyes, clean those up.
Okay.
All right, that's, and base coat your scarf in almondine. I do want you to have the lines on your scarf, not the outer lines, just the line where the scarf folds over, so we know when we're putting our plaid on next week. All right? Okay, that's the mission. Wool stencil, I'm going to start with that. All of the stenciling on his body is pretty much done with sand gray. So all I'm doing, I tap it off well on my palette first so I don't have gobs of paint in there. This is a separate part to this stencil, so I'm just using. And I go off the edge with it. I like having a bit of a stencil off the edge so it doesn't look like you're uniformly planning it. You can do some stencils, you can use the brush as a dry brush and do the stenciling. That's nice and soft and it works well. And it would work on this stencil, but snowflakes, that terrorizes snowflakes. It just wrecks them really, really easy. So I'm just going to lift this and show you. Do you see how it's coming a nice, faint scroll? And it works out very well. And I'd bring it in from the other side and I'll add that stencil as well. I'll put some coming out. So you look at your picture and you can see them, but it's up to you. If you like more, you can add more. If you like less, you can have less. This is, like I say, one of our favorite stencils. So we use it on everything under the sun, and it's beautiful done with plaster. And you use your texture paste and put it on a border. It's very nice. So our snowflakes, I'm just going to show you as if I did the rest of the scrolling here. So a snowflake, I'm going to do some with the sand gray, and they're going to be popped on over top of the piece, and then say I'll use that same one over here. When you're doing that and you keep repeating it, always rub the back of it with your finger before you lay it down again, because after a while you get a little bit of paint in there. So I'm going to go to town and I'll put a whole bunch of those on. And then I'm actually going to take a couple that I'm going to pick up some warm white with the sand gray. And I'll have some lighter ones too. You're not going to have a ton of the lighter ones. Do you see how it just gets a bit brighter? Maybe up here I'm going to have, like, this is one of my favorite shaped snowflakes. I love that guy. And the snowflakes are nice done on different pieces with the raised texture paste as well. They look really pretty. So now, again, see, I can see the wet paint there. So if I laid this down and I was going to go for another snowflake, I'm most likely going to get some paint on me. So I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to scuff it off, and I'm going into Portobello. Now I would make sure that I've done all my lighter ones first, but this is my demo, so I'm into Portobello, and it will show up a bit.
Pretty.
So you see how pretty they look, and I'll do one down here, so we've got a nice darker one that shows up. And I use some of the bigger snowflakes too, which is really nice on that. So here's one of the, let's see, there's got to be some big guys down here. Let's dig. Okay, now we're talking. We're cooking with gas. We've been using them in the other classes, so of course they're looking a little bit shabby. So this guy I'm going to go for lighter, now that I've added dark to my brush. So I scuff it all off. I'm going to pick up some sand gray and warm white. And I'm going to do a nice bright one. And I've got them coming off of the edge. And if you look at the actual picture, you'll see that I did a partial kind of this guy also on the base, almost coming right away from it. But the big guy just is beautiful on there. Like, doesn't that pop right up?
Yeah.
And you know, like the more I pick up different colors with the brush, we get a variance of all these colors. But you would have these scrolls all in the background. And on his hat, we scroll with different, you gotta have a clean dry brush. And you can't just wash this out and dry it. These are hog bristles, and they take, the next day they're still a little damp inside. But if you have all different sizes, we, up on the hat, we're gonna use some black, brown, and some portobello. We're not gonna go really light. So that's our goal for up there when you're putting on some snowflakes. And so that should be good, we'll do that.